Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shiur.
Shalom and welcome back to today's Daf Yomi Brachos Daf Nun Daled. Says the Mishnah, Haroye Mokim, if one sees the place, Shenasu Boi Nisim L'Yisrael, that miracles were performed there for the sake of Klal Yisrael. For instance, Rashi says, the point of crossing the Red Sea, the place where Klal Yisrael passed through the Yam Suf when they went out of Mitzrayim, or the crossing point of the Yarden, the Jordan River, when they didn't enter Eretz Yisrael and the Jordan split for them. So if one should see one of these places where Hashem performed miracles for Klal Yisrael, Omer, he recites a special bracha, Baruch she'asa nisim l'avoseinu b'makom hazeh. So it just says that we're meant to say Baruch Ata Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam she'asa nisim l'avoseinu, who did nisim for our forefathers b'makom hazeh, in this very place. Continues the Mishnah, if one sees a makom, a place shenekro mimenu avodah zarah, where avodah zarah was uprooted from that place, Omer, he says Baruch she'akar avodah zarah ma'artzeinu, Baruch Hashem, that who uprooted the avodah zarah from our land. Tosfos points out this bracha is only recited in Eretz Yisrael. She'akar avodah zarah me'artzeinu. Continues the Mishnah. What about on certain events? For instance, Ala Zikin, if one should see a comet, Val Hazvois on an earthquake, Vala Amim on the thunderers, Vala Ruchois on very strong, extraordinary winds like hurricane winds, Vala Brakim on lightning. Omer, he says, Baruch she'koicha ugvurasei malei olam. Hashem's koyach, Hashem's strength and might fills the world. Rashi explains, because these phenomena are seen, are felt throughout the entire world. Therefore, this bracha is appropriate. What about if he sees certain extraordinary landmarks? Ala Harim, extraordinary mountains like the Alps. Vala Gvois, extraordinary canyons. Vala Yamim on the seas. Vala Naharis, Vala Midbaris, extraordinary rivers or wildernesses. Omer, he says, Baruch Oise Maaseh Bereshis. Baruch, the one who makes the work of creation. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Haroyas Hayam Haggadah, the one who sees the Yam Haggadah, the great ocean. There is a difference in the Mefarshim, Machlekes, how to interpret these words. Some say it's referring to the Mediterranean Sea, which is close to Eretz Yisrael, and as a result of it being attached to Eretz Yisrael, it gets a greater prominence, and it's called Hayam Haggadah. Others say it's referring to the vast body of water which surrounds the entire world, the Atlantic Ocean, the Pacific Ocean. So either way, Rabbi Yehuda says this deserves a special bracha. Baruch she'asa as hayam haggadah. Continues the Mishnah. Bizman she'royeu lefrakim, only when he sees it from time to time. If he hasn't seen it yet for 30 days, then he makes this bracha. Now this clause in the Mishnah is applied to all these landmarks, Har, Megvois, etc. One will only make a bracha if he hasn't seen it within the last 30 days. Ask Rav Moshe Feinstein, why with regard to landmarks do we stipulate that it has to be something which you hadn't seen for 30 days? But with regard to the events, like the thunder and the lightning, if one makes a bracha on thunder today, and then again tomorrow he sees a thunder, he sees a lightning, certainly he'll make another bracha. Why is there no condition of lefrakim, of it has to be 30 days from one to the next? Explains Rav Moshe, the two things are very different. The events, the thunder, the lightning, the earthquake, each one is a separate event. There's a newness. However, with regard to landmarks, they're always there. It's the same mountain. It's been there since the beginning of the world. It's the same mountain throughout. So why then do we make a bracha when we see a landmark? It's because it inspires us. It has an impact on us. It brings us, it arouses, evokes feelings of awe and amazement, and evokes that desire, that yearning to connect to Hashem, who created all this beauty. As the Rambam says, what is the way, what is the derech, la'avasai, to love Hashem? By being mizbayin, contemplating, concentrating in the beauty of Hashem's creation, all the intricacies and arrangements and beauty that is contained within Hashem's world. one sees the beauty, he says, well, if this is merely Hashem's creation, His handiwork, so much more, I want to connect to the source of all this, to Hashem Himself. That creates within a person the love of Hashem. And therefore, says Rav Moshe Feinstein, although we know in our minds, we're aware about these phenomena, about the Herm and the Gvois, nevertheless, we don't like a bracha just by the mere fact that we know about their existence. We need to actually see them, because by seeing them, the sight evokes in us that feeling of awe and amazement. And therefore, says Rav Moshe, it needs to be something new, it needs to be a new experience. When you see a mountain today, you make the bracha, Oisem Ma'asav Bereishis, and you look at it again tomorrow, it doesn't have that same effect on you, it doesn't have that same impact, it doesn't inspire you the same way. Therefore, we need to wait 30 days for the emotions to ebb, and to the effect to lessen. And at that point, 30 days later, when you see it again, it can have the renewed effect. It can have a new impact, the same type of impact as it had on you 30 days ago. It evokes you that same feeling of emotion. It has a newness to it. And certainly, a bracha then is appropriate. But regarding events, as Rav Moshe, each one is inherently a new event. And certainly, every one of them, every earthquake is new. Every hurricane is a new phenomenon. And certainly there's a newness in each one, even if it's within 30 days, and therefore it requires a separate bracha. Continues the Mishnah. Al Akshamim, on rains, al Bsuris Toivus, on good tidings. Oimer Baruch HaToiv HaMeitiv, the one who is good and gives goodness. Al Bsuris Rois, on bad news. Oimer Baruch Dayan HaEmes, Hashem who is the true judge, the judge of truth. Dayan HaEmes, judge of truth. Continues the Mishnah, Bono Bayis Chadash, one who builds a new home, V'kana Kelim Chadashim, or purchases new utensils. Oimer Baruch Shechiyano V'kimano V'gion Al Tmanas Hashem, Baruch that he kept us alive. V'kimanu, he brought us V'kimanu, he kept us alive and he kept us around. He was a Mekayim us V'giyanu, brought us to this day. Now, the place can say that regarding Kelim Chadashim, what type of utensil, what type of article of clothing obligates this bracha. So it depends on the person. It needs to be something that brings out a joy and happiness within the person. It has to be something significant, depending on the person. Rav Moshe Feinstein says, a new car. Certainly one should make the bracha of Shechiyanu. Continues the Mishnah, Mevorech ala roa mein atoiva. One is meant to make a bracha on a yira, on something bad, on a tragedy. Me'ein ala toiva, even if it has potential to lead to something good later on. But we look at the present and we make the bracha accordingly. Ve'ala toiva me'ein ala ra. And similarly, if something good happens, if it's in the present, a good thing, even though it can lead into something bad, has the potential for developing into a ra. Nevertheless, we focus on the present. And if it's good now, then we make the appropriate bracha according to the present situation. Explains the Rambam, why is this so? Because there are many possibilities, many eventualities. We can't foresee the future. Let the future be in the future, says the Rambam. Dayoi le'efshari li'es efshari. Let the potential and the possible remain in the realm of possible. A person needs to look at the present and take what Hashem gives him at face value. If it's good now, thank Him and praise Him. Give Him the Shechiyonu, give Him the Hatov HaMeitiv. Even if it can lead, perhaps, into something negative in the future. Leave the future for the future. Focus on the present and thank Hashem. Continues the Mishnah about Tzayik L'Shavar. If one cries out for a past event, Harizit Tfilah Shav. It's a prayer in vain, it happened already. Hoysa Ishtu Muberes. The Mishnah gives us an example. Some say Ketzad. What is the example of something that already happened? Hoysa Ishtu Muberes, his wife was expecting. So he composes a tefillah to Hashem and he says, V'oima, Yiratzain. Shetela Dishti Zachar. That my wife should give birth to a Zachar, to a male. Harizit Tfilah Shav. It's a prayer in vain, because the gender was already determined. Or Hayababa Derech, he was coming on the road. V'shama kol tzvacha be'ir, and he hears yelling from the city. V'omer, he says, Yiratzon should be a will shaloi tehei b'seich beisi, that this should not be occurring in my household. Here again, harezu tefillah shav, it's a prayer in vain, because it's something that already occurred, it's already happening. There's no point in expressing a tefillah in this manner. Continues the Mishnah, nichnas lekrach. If one is entering a dangerous city, Rashi explains, it's a place that contains, they have these corrupt authorities there that are looking to extract and to ensnare those who come through the city. So it's a dangerous place to be. Says the Mishnah, he's meant to say a special prayer, a special tefillah for Hashem to protect him when he comes into the city. So he says two tefillahs, one on the way in and one on the way out. One on the way in, so you should have a safe entry. One on the way out, so you should have a safe departure. Actually, arba is meant to say four tefillahs. Two on the way in and two on the way out. Why? He's always meant to thank Hashem about what already happened. And he cries out for the future. So on the way in, he says two tefillahs. One, Hashem, help me get in safely. And once he's already successfully entered the city safely, he's meant to give a hodah, to express a thanksgiving to Hashem. The same thing on the way out. So we have two on the way in and two on the way out. Continues the Mishnah. Chayav adam levarich al hara. One is obligated to be mevarach, to bless Hashem on a tragic occurrence, on something bad, something negative. Kishem, with the same presence of mind, the same feeling of joy and appreciation. Shemevarach la tova, like he thanks Hashem and he blesses Hashem for something good. Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, v'ahavta Hashem lekecha, you should love Hashem b'chol levavcha, with your entire heart. B'chol levavacha, says the Mishnah, is referring to two things, two hearts. B'shnei yitzarecha has a plural connotation. B'chol levavacha is b'shnei yitzarecha, with you, both of your inclinations, both your yetzer tov u'b'yetzer hara, with both you're meant to love Hashem. How is one meant to love Hashem with his yetzer hara? Explains the Rambam, it's referring to our earthly desires, our physical drives. When we use those drives for Hashem, for service of Hashem, to strengthen ourselves, we eat and drink to strengthen ourselves, to be able to serve Hashem, to connect to Hashem, to learn Torah, keep mitzvahs. Then we are serving our Hashem also with our yetzer hara. This is what the Mishnah means. We serve Hashem with our yetzer tov, with our neshama, and our good inclination. We learn and we daven. And also with our physical needs, with our physical activities, since they also directed towards helping us, aiding and assisting us in our Agudath Hashem. Continues the Mishnah, how do we serve Hashem, how do we love Hashem with our whole soul, chol nafshecha. Afilu hu noitas nafshecha. Even if he's taking away your nefesh, there are certain times when a person needs to be meiser nefesh, to actually give away his life for Hashem, not to worship avodah zarah, gilui arayos, etc. Uv'chol me'idecha, with all your resources, says the Mishnah, b'chol mamoincha, with all your wealth. As explained by the Ramah, a person is willing, a person needs to give away all his money in order to prevent himself from being over even one aveir, even loisase. That's what the Mishnah means, b'chol mamoincha. We're meant to love Hashem. Our love for Hashem is meant to be greater and surpass our love for our money. And therefore we're willing to give up all our money, not to be over, not to transgress even one sin and one aveir. Davar achar, another explanation. B'chol ma'idecha means b'chol midu u'midu shu u'midilach. Every type of measure that Hashem measures to you, have a moidilai, respond with thanks and appreciation. And there's a girsa, have a moidilai b'ma'oid ma'oid, very, very much. Rashi says, this means b'chol midah, one is a midah toiva, when Hashem gives you goodness, and also bein midas puranus, even when Hashem gives somebody something tragic, something bad, something negative, perhaps a punishment for an aveira. In any case, thank Hashem, be moided to Him, acknowledge Him, be ma'oid, very, very much. Explains the Rambam, we don't know what's good for us. Something which appears to be good for our benefit, perhaps is actually bad. The same in the reverse. A person experiences a hard time, a hard situation, a difficult moment. We don't know what it's leading to. We don't know what the true purpose is. We don't know what the meaning is. And therefore, says the Rama, a person should always turn to Hashem with a prayer, a tefillah. Ask Hashem that everything that happens to us, all occurrences, everything that transpires in our life, should be a siba, should be a reason, should be a catalyst, should lead up to the hatzlacha ha'amitis, the true success, the eternal success, forever and ever. And therefore the Mishnah explains to us that anything that happens to us, we're meant to turn to Hashem with thanks. Hashem knows what's good for us, only Hashem does. Therefore certainly whatever's happening to us is a reason for thanks. Now the Shulchan Aruch has a very interesting pshat in the Gemara, in the Mishnah, which says, Chayev adam levarach al hatoiv al hara. One is meant to be mevarach Hashem for ra, kishem, the same way that he's mevarach al hatoiv. Now certainly it means that the bracha of the ra is not the same as the bracha of the toiv, as we said earlier. On something bad, we make a unique bracha, baruch daina emes. Hashem, the true judge, we acknowledge Hashem's judgment. It's true, it's just, it makes sense. We express our absolute faith in Hashem's conduct. But nevertheless it hurts us, it's painful. It requires a different bracha than something good, on which we make a different bracha, baruch toiva meitiv. That is a different expression. It's an expression meant to be said on something which is good. So apparently there are two different brachas. The Mishnah doesn't mean that will be the same bracha on both events, but rather says the Shulchan Aruch that one is meant to accept, to be makabel b'simcha, even a tragic event, even a difficult moment, a challenging situation. Why, says the Shulchan Aruch? Because this brings out in the person, this allows the person, it gives us the opportunity to express our faith, our absolute emunah, our steadfast commitment to Hashem and belief in His ways, in the truth of His ways. Therefore, even a tragic event, chas v'shalom, is an opportunity for us to connect to Hashem on the deepest levels. So a person is meant to be happy then as well. Deep down, he's meant to be happy and satisfied that Hashem provided him with this opportunity, not only to express his love for Hashem and his commitment to Hashem when things are going well and easy and pleasurable, but even in a difficult situation, he has the opportunity to express our most deepest feelings of true faith and steadfast connection and belief in Hashem and His ways, that He means only good for us. Therefore, deep down, a person is really going to be b'simcha in any situation. Continues the Mishnah, Lo yakil adam es reishai. A person shouldn't conduct himself with lightheadedness. Kineged shar mizrach, opposite the eastern gate. This means even outside the Beis Hamikdash, a person should not be noyeg kalas roish when he's opposite the eastern gate, which is lined up. Shu mechuvan, it's directly lined up with the other gates that are lined up according to the Keneged Beis Kodesh HaKadoshim, Keneged the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So the gates is Shiurim from Shar Mizrach, Shar Zasnashim, etc., all lined up towards the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Therefore, when one is standing opposite to Shar Mizrach, is really facing directly through to the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Continues the Mishnah, V'leikanes la'arabayis, one should not enter the harabayis, b'makle with his staff, or b'min'ole with his shoes, or pendasa with his money belt, or v'avak shal ragov with the dust on his feet. It's not respectable. V'lo yasenu kapandraya, he shouldn't make the harabayis into a shortcut, or rekika makavachamer, certainly shouldn't spit there. Concludes the Mishnah, kol choismei bracha shay b'mikdash. How do they conclude brachas in the Beis Hamikdash? They would say it in the following way: Hoyu oimrim ad ha'olam. They would say ad ha'olam. Rashi explains. For instance, when they were up to Chonin Hadas, they would say, instead of Baruch Atah Hashem Chonin Hadas, they would say Baruch Atah Hashem Elokai Yisrael min ha'olam v'ad ha'olam, from this world till the next, Baruch Chonin Hadas. And the responder would say, instead of Amen, they would say Baruch Shem Kvoid Malchusay L'Olam Vod. Since in the Beis Hamikdash they would use the Shem HaMefarash, so they would respond by praising Hashem's name, Baruch Shem Kvoid Malchusay L'Olam Vod. So the Mishnah tells us that at a certain point in history, they wouldn't say this whole thing. They would merely say, Baruch Atah Hashem Elokei Yisrael, Min ha'olam. So they would stop by the first olam. However, Meshekilku Hatzdukim, or Haminim, those heretical groups, came and ruined things. V'amru, and they claimed Ein olam ela echad, there's only one world. They didn't believe in Tchias HaMesim, in the eternity, in the coming world. So the Chachamim need to undo that impression and counter their argument, and therefore they enacted and they established that the bracha should include a reference to both worlds. V'amru hiskinu she'yoimre min ha'olam ad olam, to reference both worlds. Hashem is blessed from this world until the next world. Continues the Mishnah, V'hiskinu she'adam shoyel shalom chaver b'Shem, and they also established that one is meant to greet his friend with Hashem's name. Shenemar, as it says, V'hinei Boaz came from Beis Lechem, Vayomer el kochim, he told the harvesters, he told those that were harvesting the grain, Hashem imachem, Hashem should be with you. So he greeted them with Hashem's name. Vayomer, and they responded in kind, Yivarech Hashem, Hashem should bless you. Vayomer, Hashem imcha gibar, this is the malach who was speaking to Gideon, and he told him, Vayomer Hashem imcha gibor hachayil. So we see that the malach used the name of Hashem in a greeting. Vayomer, and as it says, Al tova is kizikne mecha. What does the pasuk mean? That although it appears perhaps that it's inappropriate to use Hashem's name in a greeting between common people, nevertheless, says the Mishnah, Vayomer, the pasuk tells us, no, we were meant to learn from the elders of our nation, who instituted this minhag, this practice. Al tavas, don't disgrace, don't belittle. Ki zikna, ki zakne mecha, the zikanim, the elders of your imecha, of your nation. Follow according to their established practices. Vayomer, and it says, Islasis Hashem. When there's a time to do for Hashem's sake, Heifeir Teresecha, your Torah becomes nullified. What does that mean, Rabbi Nassan Omer? Heifeir Teresecha, sometimes it looks as though we are nullifying the Torah. In this case, we are using Hashem's name in a common, ordinary greeting. Nevertheless, there's a purpose for it. Mishum, we do it Mishum Eis Las Hashem. For the sake, we do it for the sake of Hashem. Hashem wants, it is the will of Hashem, as the Ratzon of Hashem, that Yidden should greet each other. And therefore, when we include it in a greeting to one another, we are fulfilling the Ratzon of Hashem. We are doing for Hashem. As it says, Baki Shalom V'Ratfei, we went to pursue peace and greet each other, even when we include Hashem's name. Continues to go, Manana Mili, where do we know that one is meant to make a bracha on account of a miracle? We learned in the beginning of the Mishnah, we make a bracha for miracles. What is the source for this? By Yisro, it says, Vayomer Yisro, Baruch Hashem, Asher Hislaschem, that Hashem saved you from Parai. So we see the concept of making a bracha on account of a miracle. Ask the Maharsha. The Mishnah says, Haroya Makim Shanasa B'Nistan L'Yisrael. The person needs to see the actual place where the miracle occurred. Yisro wasn't at the place of the crossing of the Red Sea. He wasn't at the place of the Yam Suf. So how can he make a bracha on account of the nisim that Hashem did when He took the Yidden out of Mitzrayim? He wasn't there. He wasn't standing at the place, at the Makom itself. Says the Maharsha that the whole traveling through the Midbar was all one big Yetzias Mitzrayim. It was all one essence of the redemption of Mitzrayim. They had soul saving from Mitzrayim. When Hashem took us from Mitzrayim through the Yam Suf and then through the Midbar and provided us with the Iman, with the Be'er, with the Ananiya Kavod. So it was all one continuous nace of taking us out of Mitzrayim, and certainly Yisro, who was present in the Midbar, where the man was falling, and all other nisim, he certainly had grounds to make the bracha of the nace, of the nisim, that Hashem provided, Hashem did on account of Klal Yisrael, when He was taking them out of Mitzrayim. Continues the Gemara. It appears from the Mishnah that only on a nace that occurred to a rabbin, to the masses, one makes a bracha. Anisa de Rabbim Mevarchinan, but Anisa de Yachar, Anisa happened to an individual, Loy Mevarchinan, we're not meant to make a bracha on that. We have a story. There was a person who was walking in this place, Ever Yamina, which is on the south side of Pras River. Nafil Alei Arya, a lion attacked him. Is Avad Lenisa, a miracle occurred to him, and he was saved from the lion. Also, the Rabbi came then to Rava. And Rava told him, Kol emas the matas lazim, whenever you come to that location that you were saved, brich, you make a bracha as follows: Baruch she'asa li nes, Hashem who made a nes for me, b'makom hazeh in this place. We have another story. Mar Ber Darvina, Avaka Azal, he was walking by Paksa de Arvus, in this place called Paksa de Arvus, in this valley. Paksa is a valley, the Arvus of this place. V'tzachal amaya, he became very thirsty. Is Avad le Nisa, a miracle occurred. Iverle eino de maya, a spring of water was created right there on the spot. V'ishti, and he drank. V'suzim nachada, and there was another time, another occurrence. Have a ka'azal barista the Mechayza. He was walking in this marketplace of Mechayza. V'nafal le gamla pritza, a wild camel jumped him. Is sparkle ashisa, Hashem made a nes that the wall of a nearby home collapsed. Olagava, so he went inside there and he was saved from the camel. So he had two nisan that occurred to him. So how did he conduct himself, says the Gemara? Ki mata la'arvos, when he came to the place of Arvos, where the nace of the water happened, he made the bracha as follows. Baruch, he made the bracha as follows. Baruch she'asa li nes, but Arvos, in this place of Arvos, and also begamel, on account of the camel. So he included both nisan. Kimasa liristika the Mechayza. When he came to the marketplace of Mechayza, over there he made a bracha in the reverse. Baruch, he made the bracha as follows. Baruch she'asa li nes, begamel, with the camel over here in this place, u'ba'araves, and also with regard to the water in Araves. So you see clearly that one is meant to make a bracha even on a nes that occurred to him individually. Now, why with regard to the nes of the water did he mention the name, the place, Ba'araves, different than the Gamal, which he mentioned just the animal that the thing occurred with, but in Araves he actually mentioned the name of the place. Say the Mefarshim, because the nes in Araves happened in the ground. A spring of water suddenly appeared in the actual ground, in the actual place, in the earth. Therefore, he referred to the nes as the nes be'araves, in the place of Araves. So, anyways, we see here that a person is meant to make a bracha on a personal nes. Answers the Gemara, you're right. Amri, he said as follows: Anisa de Ravim, on a communal nes, a nes that happened to the masses. Kuli alma mechiavi levuruchi. Everybody is required to make the bracha when they see that location. For instance, the nes that happened to Klal Yisrael, that obligates anybody to make a bracha when they encounter that place. However, Anisa de Yachid, on an individual, a personal nes, he needs to make a bracha. And the Goyin puts in, Brei and his child, Barbrei and his grandchild, Chayiv l'brucha, they need to make a bracha. But no one else. So certainly everybody is mechuyev to make a bracha on a nes. There's a difference. An individual nes obligates the person himself to make the bracha. But a communal nes, a nes that happened to a rabbim, that requires anybody to make the nes. So a nes that happened to Klal Yisrael, or a roiv of Klal Yisrael, requires anybody to make the bracha when they come to that location. Continues the Gemara, Tana Rabbanan. So just to make a summary about the halachas we learned in the Mishnah. Number one, we learned that if one encounters a makom shenasa by nislam Yisrael, he makes a bracha she'asa nislam v'seinu makom hazeh. If he encounters a place that Avodah Zarah is uprooted from there, he makes a bracha baruch she'akar Avodah Zarah ma'atzenu, if it's in Eretz Yisrael. As Taisus points out, this halacha is only in Eretz Yisrael. When one experiences the following events: zikin, zvois, ra'amim, ruchos, or brakim, a comet, earthquakes, thunders, lightnings, extraordinary winds, he makes the bracha of shekoicha gevurasim alaylam. When he cites a extraordinary, inspiring landmark, harim, gvois, yamim, nahoris, midbaris, he makes the bracha of oisem mas bereshis. According to Rabbi Yehuda, by the Yam HaGadol, he makes a special bracha she'asa sem agadol. When one has geshamim or psuris toivis, the brachas baruch ha-tova meitiv, psuris rois, dayan emes. When one is bana by his chadash or kana kelim chadasha, the bracha shechiyana v'kimanu v'giyana lasmanase. Continues the Gemara, Tana Rabban, haroye ma'averes hayam. He sees the crossing point in the yams of the Red Sea. I just heard recently that there were some explorers that actually discovered some things that looked like chariot wheels that were embedded in certain areas in a beach in the Red Sea, and in fact they found one that looked very unique and had a very royal design to it. Apparently, perhaps that was from the chariot of Pari himself. So they claim to have perhaps discovered the actual place of the Ma'abris Hayam, where the Yidden passed through in the Yamsuf, and the Mitzrim followed them and were sunk. So if one should see that specific place, or Ma'abris Hayarden, the specific crossing point where the Yidden passed through the Jordan River on the way into Eretz Yisrael, and it split for them. Ma'abris Nachle Arnoin, the canyons of the Nachle Arnoin, Avnei Al Gavish, those hailstones, Moir Beis Chayron, in the descent of Beis Chayron. Ve'evan, he sees the stone Shabikesh. The Gemara will elaborate on all this soon. Ve'evan, and the stone Shabikesh, Lizreik Oig Melech HaBashan Yisrael, that Oig Melech HaBashan wanted to throw it on Klal Yisrael and kill them. Ve'evan Sheyashav Moshe Olea, the stone Sheyashav Olea Moshe sat on B'Shah She'asa Yisho Mocham Amalek, during the war that Yisho conducted with Amalek. So if he sees any of these items, any of these locations, V'ishte Shaloit, he sees the wife of light to turn into a pillar of salt, or he sees V'choimas Yerichai, the wall around Yerichai Shenivla B'mkoima that got swallowed in its place. On any of these, Al Kulam Tzorach She'itein Hayda V'Shevach L'fnei HaMokim, he's meant to express gratitude and praise to Hashem. It says B'Shleima Ma'avris Hayam, the first item, the crossing point of the Yam Suf, we know what that is. The Chsiva Yavo B'nei Yisrael B'Seich Hayam B'Yabasha. So Klal Yisrael came into the Yam Suf in the dryness. So we understand what that's referring to. Ma'avris Hayardin, what does it mean? The crossing point of the Yarden. The Chsiva, it says Vayamda Kahanim Noisi Aaron carrying the ark Bris Hashem Becharava, they were standing in dryness B'Seich Hayardin Hachein, ready V'Chol Yisrael Oivrim, when the Yarden split, when the Yarden dried up, all Yisrael passed through Becharav and dryness Adasher Tamu Kol Hagoy, until the entire nation completed passing through Ma'avris Hayarden. So we know that Ma'avris Hayarden is referring to the place where this nace took place. Ella Ma'avris Nachli Arnon Monolan. What is this referring to? The crossing point of the Nachli Arnon, the canyons of Arnon. What do we find a nace associated with that place? The Chsiv, as it says, Al Kein Yomer B'Sefer Melchamas Hashem Ezvoy V'Sufa. Says in Maratana we learned, Es Avoy Besufa is actually referring to the name of two Mitzrayim, two people that were inflicted with leprosy. Shnei Mitzrayim Hayu. So Es and Vahev, Es is the name of one Mitzrayim, and Hev is the name of the second one. So we have Es and Hev, Es Vahev, Besufa. They're walking at the end, the very end. They trail behind the camp of Klal Yisrael in the Midbar. Shnei Mitzrayim Hayu Dahava Mahalchen B'Seif Machne Yisrael. They trailed behind. They weren't allowed to be inside the Machne because they were Mitzrayim. So what happened? Ki hava kol cholfi Yisrael, when Yisrael were passing next to this area, also Maroi, so the guy in the Maroim, they planned an attack. So this was a very deep canyon between two mountains, and one side of the mountain belonged to Moav, and the Maroim, the guy in there, figured they had a plan. They'll ambush Klal Yisrael when they come through this very narrow, this deep canyon, and they will hide up above and then pelt them with stones and kill them. Abdullah Nikarusa says the more they bored out holes, these caves in the mountains above. V'tashuboin, and they hid in there, they ambushed them. Amri, they said, Ki chalfi Yisrael hacha, when Yisrael passed through down below, Niktalinun, we will pelt them with arrows, with stones, and kill them. V'lo yaviyadi, but they didn't know one thing. The Orain, Havu Masu Kamai Yisrael. There was an ark, an Orain that contained the Shivrei Luchas, the broken tablets, which actually marched ahead, was 3 days ahead of Klal Yisrael. And what was the function of the Aron, and would flatten out the mountains so that Klal Yisrael could walk with ease. Kivan the Asa Aron, as soon as the Aron arrived at this location of the Nachle Aron, the canyons of Aron, Idbuku Tur Ba'adadi. So these mountains attached to each other, they got connected, and they got flattened out by the Aron, Vikatlinun. And this killed out all those who were ambushing Klal Yisrael from within those mountains. V'nochaz damayel Nachle Aron, and their blood spilled down into the Nachle Aron, to the canyons of Arnon. Now Klal Yisrael passed by, right on top, and they didn't notice any blood. But the Mitzrayim who were trailing behind, so when they saw the mountains go back to the original location, so they noticed the blood spurting forth. Ki asu es vahev, when Es and Vahev showed up, chazu dama the kanafik meituri, so they saw the blood trickling out from between the mountains. Asu v'amru l'Yisrael, they came in and informed Klal Yisrael about the tremendous miracle that occurred to them without them even knowing. V'amru shira, and then they expressed shira on account of this great miracle. Hainu t'chsiv, v'eshad an-nacholam, the outpouring of these canyons, asher natal l'shavas ar, on account of the fact that the mountain went over and attached himself to the other side, v'nishan l'gvul moyav, that was leaned over to the gvul moyav, meaning ar is a term for moyav, so that one mountain attached himself to the other side, which was moyav, and by doing so saved Klal Yisrael. So this is how Klal Yisrael expressed himself in the Shira to Hashem on account of this great miracle. So this location of Nachli Arnon witnessed a great miracle. Therefore, if one should have a sighting of this place, he's meant to make a bracha, a baruch she'asa nisan l'avsein v'makam hazeh. Avnei al gavish. What's this phenomena of these stones, the hailstones? May avnei al gavish. Tana, we learned avonim she'amdu al gavish. Al gavish is the acronym of Rashi Teva. It's stones that stayed suspended in the air because of an ish. V'yard al gavish, and then they came down, they descended al gavish because of an ish. Explains the Gemara. Amdu al gavish, they stayed suspended in the air on account of an ish. Who is this ish? Zeh Moshe. T'chsiv ish Moshe out of Moed. So these hailstones were the ones that came down during the Makas Barat in Mitzrayim, and they stayed up in the air. Ksiv v'yachtu al kodesh v'barad, and the sounds, the noise in the barad, the hailstones, umatar, and the rain, so it stayed up in the air. It stayed suspended in the air. When Hashem decided to terminate the Makkah of Makkah's Barad, the hailstones stayed suspended in the air on account of Moshe. And then they came down, Yordu al Gav Ish, they came back down on account of Yeshua, to provide a miracle for Yeshua. Who is Ish? In this case, Zeh Yeshua. Yeshua benut Ish asherach boy. So we see Ish in reference to Yeshua. So when did these hailstones come to help him? The Goyim were running away from Klal Yisrael. They were descending in the descent of Beis Chorin. Hashem threw down on them these great stones, these Avnei al Gavish, these hailstones. Those same hailstones from Makas Barad that were suspended midair came down now on account of Yeshua to provide a miracle and to destroy the enemy. What is the next item? Evan Shabikesh Oig Melech HaBashan, the stone that Oig Melech HaBashan was a giant. He endeavored to throw it onto Klal Yisrael, Lizra Klal Yisrael. Gemara, we accepted a tradition that this event occurred. Omar, so Oig contemplated, he said to himself, let's take a look. Let's size up the camp. Machne Yisrael Kamav. How large is the camp of Klal Yisrael? It's lots of parsi. It's 3 parsi by 3 parsi. Very simple. I'll go ahead. I'll uproot a mountain, 3 parsa big, which is the perfect size, a custom-made weapon. I'll throw it on them, I'll kill them out. So he proceeded with his plan. Ozal, he went to Akar Tura Bartosa Parsa, he uprooted a mountain, which was 3 parsa big. V'aisi al Reishi, and he brought it on his head. He carried it on his head. V'aisi kuchabrichu olei kamti. Hashem had a different plan. He brought little worms, little ants. V'nokvu, and they bored a hole through the mountain. V'nochazari, and the mountain landed down on his head on account of the holes that were bored through it. It loosened up and it landed. It came through his head. It landed on his neck. V'nachas b'tzavri, landed on his neck. Have a boy lemishli, tried to pull it off, to get it over his head. He couldn't do it. Mashchi shini lahagis lahagisa. Hashem made that his teeth should extend to this side and to that side, and the mountain got stuck in his teeth. He couldn't pull it out. And he couldn't pull it back out. And on this, the pasuk says, "V'hainu d'chsiv shinei risham shibarta." What does it mean? The teeth of wicked people you broke. Al tikri shibarta. Don't read shibarta. Ella shir vavta, you extended. Hashem, you've extended the teeth of Oy Melech HaBashan, so the mountain gets stuck and he can't get it out. So now in this unfortunate state, in this weakened state, he was stuck with the mountain stuck over his head. So Moshe took the opportunity and killed him. It says the Gemara, Moshe kam ahava eser amis. Moshe was 10 amas high, as Rashi says. The pasuk tells us that Moshe was making vayokim Moshe es hamishkan. Moshe erected the Mishkan, and the drasha is that Hakim es hamishkan, that he erected himself to the same height as the Mishkan, and we know the Mishkan was 10 amas high. So we know from there that Moshe Rabbeinu himself was 10 amas tall. Says the Gemara once again, Moshe kam ahava, how tall was Moshe? Es amas. Shakal narga, so Moshe Rabbeinu took a hold of an axe, which was bar es amen, which was 10 amas big. Shaver es amen, he jumped 10 amas, and by doing so he was able to reach he was able to reach and hit him in his ankle, and he killed him. So if one sees the Evan, the stone, it seems like the Evan is referring to this mountain, and he sees the stone, and therefore this is the Makim where a miracle occurred to Klal Yisrael. He's meant to make a bracha. Continues the Gemara. The Evan sheyoshav ala Moshe, the stone that Moshe Rabbeinu sat on. What is that? The chsiv, as it says. V'idei Moshe kvedim, during the war with Amalek, Moshe's hands got heavy. As it says in the pasuk, Moshe Rabbeinu would pick up his hands to heaven, and that would generate the feeling of emunah, the feeling of faith in the hearts and the minds of Klal Yisrael, and would result in Klal Yisrael being victorious over Amalek. But he couldn't keep his hands in a elevated position too long. His hands were heavy. So what did they do? Vayikhu Evan. So they took a stone, Vayasimu Tachtav. So it says that Aaron and Hur would support his hands. But as the Farshim explains, since Moshe Rabbeinu was very tall, it was very hard for them to keep his hands supported when he was in a standing position. They need to sit him down so they can reach his hands properly. So they placed a stone. Why a stone? Something uncomfortable, so that he would show, display that he's taking part, he's identifying with the difficult moment of war that Klal Yisrael is experiencing. So they took this stone, they put underneath him, V'yashav aleh, and he sat on it. So if one sees this specific stone, this very Evan, he's meant to make a bracha on account of the nace that occurred when Klal Yisrael was victorious over Amalek. Continues the Gemara of the Ishtay Shaloit, and the wife of Lot that turned into a pillar of salt. Shenemar v'athabet ishta mi'achrav. His wife looked behind him, v'atehi nitziv melach, and she turned into a pillar of salt. Since she looked back at the devastation that was taking place by Stoim, as Rashi explains in the Chumash, since they weren't really deserving of this nace, therefore they weren't meant to look back and to witness the punishment and devastation that was meted out onto Stoim v'Amorah. She nevertheless looked back and she turned into a pillar of salt. Continues the Gemara, if one sees the wall of Yerichai that got swallowed, the wall got swallowed in its place. Says the Gemara, we understand all the other items on the list are nisa, are indeed miracles, and therefore they require the bracha of baruch she'asa nisan l'avitzeinu malkam hazeh. However, l'ishta shaloit, this pillar of salt, Ishtay Shalit, was a puranasu. It was a tragedy. Why would one make a bracha of shasa nisim lavisein makmazeh? Says the Gemara, the Amar Baruch Daina Emes. You're right. The proper bracha here is Baruch Daina Emes, the judge of truth. Says the Gemara, But the Brisa lists this amongst the other items that require a shvach v'hodah, thanksgiving and praise. Says the Gemara, Tani, let's amend as follows. Tani, let's learn as follows. Al loit v'al ishta and v'rchem shtayim. On Lot and his wife together, it's a twofold experience. We make two brachos. Al ishta oime baruch dayin emes, on account of the tragedy that occurred with his wife. You make baruch dayin emes. V'al loit, but when you see that pillar of salt, you also remember the nace that happened to Lot, that he was indeed saved. And therefore you say, oimer baruch, Zoyches HaTadikim, Hashem who remembers Avraham Avinu and in his chus, in his merit, saved Lot. Omar Rabbi Yochanan, afilu b'shas kaseh shel Kadosh Baruch Hu, even during the anger of Hashem, Zoyches HaTadikim, he remembers the tzadikim. Shnema vayi b'shachis elikim asar hakikar, when Hashem was destroying these cities of the plain, vayiskros kim es Avraham, Hashem remembered Avraham, vayishalach es Lot, v'teich hafeich, and he sent away Lot from the upheaval, from the devastation taking place in those cities. Continues the Gemara, V'choyma siricha shenivla. V'choyma siricha nivla. Do you propose that the wall around Richa got swallowed? V'nafla. It fell. Shenem, as it says, V'ahi kishma yam skala shofar. When the nation heard the sound of the shofar, V'yariu am trua gedola. They blew a trua gedola, V'tipor la choyma tachtel. And as a result, the wall fell down. Says the Gemara, Kivon the pussy because the wall was built as a square. The height and the width, pussy, the width, room and the height, were identical. If so, Mishamachi, therefore, ivla blui. If so, it must be that it was swallowed. Meaning, when something is erect, standing up tall, it can fall down. But when something is square, it doesn't really fall. The concept of falling doesn't really apply to it. Therefore, when the pasuk says, evidently means it was swallowed into the ground right in its place. So in conclusion, the Brisa teaches us that we make the bracha of she'asa nisan la'oseinu mokem hazeh when we encounter one of the following locations, either Ma'avris Hayam, where the Eden passed through the Yam Suf, Ma'avris Hayarden, the Ma'avris Nachlei Arnon, those that canyon over there where they wanted to ambush the Eden, or the Avnei Al Gavish, those hailstones that Hashem threw down on the Goyim, or the stone that Bikesh Oik Ligzor Israel, or the stone that Moshe Rabbeinu sat on, the Choyma Siricha that got swallowed, and finally, also Ishtei Shalit, when he sees the pillar of salt. He makes two brachos, Baruch Daina Emes on the Ishtei Shalit, and Baruch Zeches HaTzadikim upon saving Lot in the schus of Avraham Avinu. Continues the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amarav, Arba tzrichim l'hodos, 4 individuals are required to express hodah, thanksgiving to Hashem. Who are they? Yerdei Hayam, those who go and travel down in the seas. Holchem Midbaros, those who travel through the wilderness. Umisha Yecholev and Israpet, one who became ill and recovered. Umisha Yechovish v'Sasurim, one who was a prisoner of Yatz and he was set free. Yerdei Hayam Minallah, where do we know that one who is a seafarer needs to express Haidah to Hashem? The Chsiv, Yerdei Hayam Bani, is those who descend down into the sea with ships. Hey Maro Mase Hashem, they have seen the doing of Hashem. V'oimar v'yamid ruach sa'ora, Hashem placed a stormy wind, Yalu Shamayim, and as a result there was a storm, and the ship went up to the heaven, Yerdu to Haimais, and descended down to the depths. It was rocked up and down. V'oimar yoichogu v'yonu kashikar, they reeled and they shook around like an intoxicated person. And what did they do as a result when they were in trouble? They called out Hashem in their distress. Hashem took them out of their trouble. Hashem calmed down the storm. Indeed, they were glad, happy that everything quieted down. And as a result, the pasuk says, they expressed thanksgiving to Hashem on account of His chesed to them. And they expressed the wonders of Hashem livnei Adam to people. They publicized it. Continues the Gemara. What is the source for Holchem Midbaros Minallah? Tichsiv Toba Midbar B'Shimon Darach. They erred in their way through the Midbar, in the desolate path. Ir Moshe v'Lo. They didn't find an inhabited city. Vayitzakol Hashem, they call out Hashem. Vayadrichem b'derech yishar, He guided them on the straight path. Yoidel Hashem Chazda, as a result, they thanked Hashem. Next says the Gemara, Misha Cholav and Esrape, one who was sick and recovered, as it says, Evilim, fools, Mederach Pisham, on account of their Averis, of their Psham, of Nesem Yis'anu. They were afflicted as a result of Derech Pisham, the ways of their Averis and their Avoinos. And they got sick. Kol Eichad Sal Nafsham, they abhorred food, they didn't have the appetite to eat. What did they do? And Hashem responded, Yishlach Dvar V'Yirpaim, and he cured them. What did they do as a result? Yoidel Hashem Chazdoi, and they expressed to Hashem thanksgiving. Finally, Misha Yechavesh Asurim, one who was incarcerated in prison. Minolo, how do we know? Those who sit in darkness, in the shadow of death. Ki himru imre'el, because they rebelled against the word of Hashem. Hashem humbled their heart with work. As a result, they turned to Hashem, they called to Him from their distress. Hashem took them out, Hashem will take them out from their darkness and their shadow of death. So what did they do as a response? Says the Gemara, what exactly is one meant to say? What is the formula of this bracha for these four individuals? How do they express their Haidah? Amar Vida. Baruch Goimel Chasadim Tovim. Blessed Hashem who grants, who gives good chasadim. And the Haggais Hagra adds, Goimel Chayavim Tovos. Hashem gives to Chayavim, even those that are guilty and undeserving. Hashem gives them Tovos, good things. So this is what he starts the pasuk with. Amar Vida Baruch Goimel Chayavim Tovos Shegmalani, that Hashem granted me too. Kol Tov, all good. And that is the text that we say today. Amar Abai. Abai Yomar. One is meant to express thanksgiving. He's meant to say this bracha in front of 10 people. We're meant to exalt Hashem, big halam, in the assembly of the nation of the people. You have to make sure two of them are Rabbanon Torah scholars. In the Moshav, the sitting of Zikanim, he will be Mahalel, he will praise Hashem. Marshal points out that we require Zikanim here, who understand, who appreciate the Hillel of Hashem, the praise of Hashem. That requires an intellectual capacity. And therefore, he's meant to do it in the presence of two Zikanim, to be Mahalel Hashem in the proper way, in the way that people will appreciate it. Maskal Ravashi. How do you know that out of the 10, only 2 need to be Rabbanon? Maybe all of them need to be Rabbanon. Says the Gemara, Miksiv Bekal Zekanim. Let's say in the assembly of Zekanim, it says Bekal Amksiv, which means ordinary people. Ve'ema Be'asara Sha'arama. So the Gemara keeps on asking, maybe we require 10 ordinary people, Be'asara of Sha'arama, or train Rabbanon. And in addition, he needs another 2 Rabbanon, so he needs a total of 12. Kasha, indeed, this is difficult. So in conclusion, one makes the bracha Baruch Hagoyim L'chayim Toivos, when he's either one of the Yardei Hayam, a Holchem et Baris, a Choylev and Esrape, or a Chavesh Veis Asurim. He does it in front of 10 people, when 2 of them are Rabbanon. Continues on with this story. Rabbi Yehuda Kessler got sick. Ve'ispak, Rabbi Yehuda got sick and he recovered. Al Legabei, Rav Chana Bagdasa, Rav Chana from Baghdad came to visit him. Rabbanon, together with Rabbanon. Omri Leis, they expressed their gratitude as follows: Brich Rachmana, blessed Hashem, the Yahavach Ne'alan, who granted you to us, but didn't grant you to the earth. Meaning Hashem allowed you to recover, to survive your illness, so that you are granted to us, that we have you. Amar Lewis, he responded, Rabbi Yehuda responded, and he says, by saying this expression of gratitude, Pratrasun Yasi, you've pattered me, you've exempted me from expressing my own thanks. Says Amar Abai, doesn't Abai tell us that the Haidah needs to be in front of 10? Says the Hava Be'asar, here too there were 10. He wasn't saying it. How could he be Yaitze? Says Umar Leitzarach must be speaking the Ani Basrai Amen. He responded with Amen. Therefore he acknowledged it, and therefore he was Yaitze. Says Rikivega, although ordinarily a person hears a bracha, he's Shomeya. That is already enough. He doesn't need to answer Amen, he's Shomeya Ka'inai. Here it's different, because had they have said the bracha, the text of Hagoyim Alachayavim Toivos, the standard text that he needed to say, yes, indeed, if you had heard that, he would have been Yaitzer without the Amen. But here they formulated their own expression. They said, Baruch Hashem, who granted you to us. That's something that they could say. He can't say that. So he, by merely listening to them, can't be Yaitse. It's only because he said Amen, he acknowledged with his own verbalization. He acknowledged and he said, yes, I acknowledge the expression of thanks to Hashem. So the Amen was instead of the bracha, and this way he was Yaitse, the bracha of Agoimel. Continues the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Shloisha Tzrichem Shimur. There are 3 people that need to be watched, need constant accompaniment. Veilein, these are they. Chayla, one who was sick, because since he became sick, his mazel got weakened, and the shadim can perhaps cause him harm. Chasam Rakala, this is the time of their joy, and the shadim are jealous of them. So they need shmira. Masnisa Tana, and the Brachos we learned Chayla, Chaya, a woman who gave birth, she's also in a weakened state. Chasam Rakala, Yeshayim Af Aval, also a mourner, since his mazel is weak on account of the tragedy that he just experienced. Yeshayim, some add, Af Talmid Chacham Balayla, also Talmid Chacham at night. Even when they're awake, they require shmira because the shadim are jealous of the Talmid Chacham. So they require shmira to protect them from the shadim.